This is the outside zone run. It's a foundational concept in every level of football. Some of the greatest teams ever and some of the most dominant dynasties ever were literally built off of this one play. And still to this day, all 32 teams in the NFL run it to some degree in every game. And yet, for most fans that watch every game their team plays week after week, month after month, year after year, very rarely on TV does anybody ever actually explain how outside zone works and why it's been kind of a cornerstone of the entire sport for decades upon decades at this point. They don't talk about the nuances, they don't talk about the blocking scheme, they don't talk about the reads, they don't talk about what it actually is. And so today, that's changing. You're going to learn about outside zone.
Outside zone.
Outside zone.
It's outside zone.
Outside zone is a very involved scheme.
And this is what I loved about outside zone run schemes. It is designed to get these big boys in the middle running horizontal.
Outside zone as an overall umbrella concept can be executed in virtually an infinite number of ways, just based on personnel grouping, formation, pre-snap motion, and of course how the defense itself is lined up, because that's usually going to change a lot of the angles and timing here as well. Every single player on offense, in terms of their assignment and the techniques they're going to use to accomplish those assignments, everything is flexible and adaptable for all 11 offensive players, which is why this concept overall is pretty much impossible to stop. You're going to see defenses that are really talented and really well coached slow it down, obviously, but in terms of outright stopping it, that almost never happens. Now, what do I mean by improvisation and adaptation exactly? Every player on the offense has the freedom to execute their role in a variety of different ways, like I mentioned, but let's start specifically with how the running back himself actually reads this play once the ball is snapped. This is a run from the second quarter of the 2019 NFC Championship, and in my opinion, those 2019 Niners under Kyle Shanahan were one of the best outside zone teams of all time. They dominated everyone, and this run from Raheem Mostert, to me, is a perfect example of how his vision worked on outside zone. The aiming point for any running back on outside zone to the strong side of the formation is at the butt of their tight end. They want to press and threaten that D gap as much as possible while they string the defense out and let those blocks develop in front of them. From there, Mostert will read the play gap to gap from the outside working in, and he never really knew which crease he was going to hit before the ball was snapped, because that read is decided on the fly based on how the blocks play out. So for instance, if this play side edge jumped inside with the 9-jam-7 technique, that would dictate a bounce read, and Mostert would take it outside and try to beat the linebacker to the corner. But since the edge is staying outside and he's boxing it, he's not jumping inside, Mostert is eliminating the bounce read from consideration, and he's going to be looking at the lead block from the fullback as his next read instead. The linebacker obviously got to Juszczyk's front side here, so that also eliminates that gap now, so Mostert's going to bend it back even further to the next gap in his read. As the 3 technique fights over the top of the guard, Mostert now eliminates that read as well, but because the double on the 3 technique got so much vertical displacement from the line of scrimmage in the first place, he can make it even easier on himself to hit the next gap in the sequence by still going to press it outside and then cutting off the guard's backside hip into open grass. This all happens extremely quickly, so it's really easy to miss in real time, but Mostert read through 4 gaps in only 5 steps to finally find this crease. And that's the beauty of outside zone to me. It doesn't require every block to succeed and to win to the front side. It just requires one to succeed, as well as, of course, having a running back that you can trust to read out that play quickly enough to find that one successful block. It's a philosophy that's more about vision, processing, and quite literally thinking on your feet than anything else. Now, believe it or not, the read that the running back has in this scheme is not nearly as complicated and not nearly as nuanced as all of the pre-snap and post-snap reads that the offensive linemen have for how the scheme itself is blocked. All of Mostert's offensive linemen and tight ends and fullbacks in this system have to be just as smart and instinctive as he is, so that they can read the defense properly and create those creases in the first place using a huge, and I mean huge, variety of different technical nuances. And once you understand some of these tiny little technical details for offensive linemen and how big of an effect they have on an overall offense's success, you're probably never going to see football the same way ever again. Before I get into that though, really quick, side tangent. I think this is going live Wednesday, May 31st, maybe Wednesday night, because it has to. If you ever notice why YouTubers always release videos on the last day of the month, and I mean like literally on the last day, doesn't matter what month it is or how many days in the month there are, we will find a way to release it on the last day because that's when we have to for sponsorship deadlines and contracts. And I'm a creature of habit and nothing if not predictable. So if you give me 4 weeks to work on a video, I will find a way to get it out on the last day. So here we are. But I will say this, small caveat, the sponsor of this week's video that we are barely sneaking under the deadline is the type of sponsor that I use on these deadline weeks in order to get stuff out on time that is still up to my standard of quality, and that is Factor. They are both the origin of and the solution to all of my time management failures. And if you don't know who they are, by the way, because you're new to this channel, Factor delivers fresh, never frozen meals right to your doorstep. They only take a couple minutes in the microwave to heat up, and they are awesome. It's all real ingredients, it's all real food. It's not frozen processed crap that makes you feel awful afterward. It's just good meals that are actually cooked, and it saves me a lot of time in busy weeks like this one, where I dig myself into a hole and I don't have the bandwidth to be a home chef like I normally want to be. I can just throw these in the microwave and eat really well. Their menus are updated weekly and include 34+ meal options and 45+ add-on options, and those include keto, calorie smart, even vegan, vegetarian, protein-oriented meals even if you need them, so it works well with any dietary preference. It's just good stuff. Factor meals have come in clutch for me for almost 2 years now at this point. They've partnered with the channel for a long time, and especially in weeks like this one where I have very hard deadlines, including for Factor themselves, I cannot recommend them enough. So if you want to try it for yourself, you can use my promo code by heading to factor75.com or click the link in the description below and use code FILMROOM50 to get 50% off your first order. Again, that is 50% off your first box with code FILMROOM50 at factor75.com or the link in the description if that's easier. Thank you to Factor for sponsoring this week's show and letting me slip this one in under the deadline. And with that, let's go get really nerdy about offensive line play. Looking back at that same Mostert run against the Packers, I want to start here because that's a great play to get you familiar with all the different types of blocks that go into outside zone. The overall goal of the play, if possible, is to attack what's called the bubble of the defense. The bubble is a coaching term for basically whatever gap in the front seven is not covered up by a defender that's on the line of scrimmage. Wherever the bubble is, that's probably where the ball is going to go, and the bubble can be basically anywhere depending on how the defensive front is lined up. So for instance, the Packers are in a bare front here, meaning the A gaps are covered, the B gaps are covered, the backside C gap is covered, and the front side D gap is covered, which means the bubble is the front side C gap because that's the only gap on the line of scrimmage that isn't covered up by a big body. If the 49ers want to attack that bubble, they need to execute what's called a double block to seal out this frontside 3 technique so that Mostert can hit that gap. Now, to clarify, when I say double block, I'm not strictly talking about a double team. Kyle Shanahan just calls a combo block between the frontside guard and the frontside tackle a double block. And for context, a combo block between the center and the frontside guard is called a single. Again, the double is between the guard and the tackle. A combo between the tackle and the tight end is called a triple. And then if there's 2 tight ends out there on a wing, a combo between them would be called a quad. So when I say double, I'm not just talking about double team, that's just literally what they call the block. And that's only what he calls his frontside combos, by the way. He has entirely different names for backside combos too, so that people don't get them confused. The center and the backside guard, if they combo on a block, that's called an A block. The backside guard and backside tackle would be called a B block. The tackle and the tight end would be called a C block, and the backside combo between 2 tight ends, which let's just pretend there's 2 tight ends there, that would be called a D block. So again, backside combos and frontside combos are called entirely different things just to avoid confusion. And all of that is information that you're going to have to know, by the way, because the most adaptable element of an outside zone play call is the fact that any one of these combos can take place on any given play depending on where the bubble is. On this play in particular, you can see a perfectly executed double block to the front side on this 3 technique. The play side guard is getting great depth and width on his first step so that he can try to get even with the helmet of the 3 technique, while the play side tackle doesn't go wide himself, but rather goes straight vertical into the 3 technique so that he can get into what's called near foot, near shoulder position. Near foot, near shoulder means that you want to lead with the foot that is on the same side of your body as the shoulder that's making contact. That is how you generate power. Your near foot and your near shoulder have to be working together. And from there, once you do make contact, you can get good knockback on the shoulder and the play side hip of that 3 technique, which ideally will laterally jolt him and displace him just enough so that the guard can now go from being even to getting all the way to the front side of that 3 technique so that he can take over the block and cut him off. And while he is cutting him off, that's when the tackle works up to the 2nd level to finally pick off a linebacker. If you do this combo right, which the 49ers did here, you can not only laterally cut off the 3 technique, but you can also vertically displace him 3, 4, maybe even 5 yards down the field so that the running back can then press that hole even more and generate even more speed into his cutback, which, as I talked about before, that's what Raheem Mostert does here. Every ounce of success with this concept always comes from working together, because when everyone works together, I mean both the running backs and the offensive linemen, this play is about the closest thing this sport has to art. Now, you might be wondering, by the way, what about those backside combination blocks that we talked about earlier? When do those come into play? Because it can't just all be about front side combos and making the running back kind of press and then dead leg and cut up the field. It can't just all be about the front side, right? Well, look no further than this play against the Rams from that very same season back in 2019. LA is in a pretty different defense here than the Packers were. They're in a single high safety look, while the Packers were in a 2 high safety look. So the run fit rules are very different here. And if you watch my last episode on the differences between cover 3 and the Tampa 2 and how they fit the run, you'll remember that. And because the run fits are different in a single high safety look, and because the 49ers are in a single back formation without a fullback on the field, that means the key blocks that matter here are different as well. The C-gap is the bubble once again, so we know that's probably going to be the point of attack, but there's no fullback to take on this safety in the hole. That means it falls on the shoulder of the right tackle to handle that safety, but one small caveat, if he has to handle that safety that's already leveraged way outside of him to the front side, that means that he doesn't have time to stick on a double block with Aaron Donald. He has to get front side now, or that safety's probably going to get a free tackle for loss. Knowing all of that, that means the key block here turns from a double into a triple. Again, triple means a play side combo between the tackle and the tight end. But this is no ordinary triple. Remember, everything can change on the fly just based on how the blockers are reading the defensive lineman's technique. Mike McGlinchey's first couple of steps here are just reading George Kittle and Dante Fowler locking horns on the edge. If Fowler does that 9-jam-7 technique, meaning he starts at a 9 and then shoots inside to a 7, meaning he's getting inside of Kittle, then McGlinchey's just going to overtake that block and he's going to get outside of Fowler while working with Kittle to pass him off, and then Kittle's going to move up to the 2nd level to handle that safety. But if Fowler stays either head up on Kittle or outside of Kittle like he does here, then McGlinchey will just give him a little hand jam to keep him outside, and McGlinchey will be the one to climb up to the 2nd level to handle that safety. On these combo blocks, it's all post-snap reads for who is staying on the line of scrimmage and who's climbing, and you never really know which one it's going to be until the play's in motion because it's all about reaction. Now, finally getting to the backside combo block that I teased earlier, this is also incredibly important because somebody has to get up to the Mike linebacker. It can't be the play side tackle, and it obviously can't be the play side guard because he has to hold on for dear life against Aaron Donald, so it has to be the center. And the center will get up there by working with that backside guard to execute an A block, or, as we said earlier, a combo block in the backside A gap. It works almost the same way as the double block that we just went over against Green Bay, but there are some slight differences. The backside guard that's overtaking the block is still getting depth and as much width as possible on that first step, but the center doesn't really have time to get vertical and to put near foot, near shoulder onto this one technique to help him out. He has to get width himself and slip up to the 2nd level as fast as possible, or he's probably just not going to get to the Mike, especially in today's game where a lot of Mike linebackers are like 230 pounds and run 4.4. They're just too fast. You have to go immediately, so he can only offer minimal help to the backside guard. That's why you see this backside guard really digging deep to get as low and as wide as possible, and he's getting underneath that one technique's armpit with pretty much a rip move of sorts, almost like a pass rusher would, just so that he can try to get those defenders' shoulders turned and get him perpendicular to the line of scrimmage. Because once the defensive tackle's shoulders are turned, you can kind of do whatever you want to him. You can displace him vertically down the field, you can pivot off your near foot and swing your hips around, and next thing you know, you're on the front side of him and he's completely sealed out of the play and there's nothing he can do. I cannot tell you how hard this block is to pull off for both the backside guard and the center, because neither of them have a leverage advantage at all. But when you as an offense can pull it off and it works, you pretty much just score. Like, there's nothing a defense can do about it if your team is good at this block. You pretty much just win the game. That's how important it is. If you can execute combo blocks like that, 9 times out of 10, you're going to win. And the only time you lose is when the other team has Pat Mahomes. That's the 10th time where, yeah, you're kind of fucked there. But for every other game, yeah, you're going to get the W. Now, one more example here that I really want to give is how outside zone is executed when the line of scrimmage is stacked with bodies, you're all gapped out, and there is no obvious bubble in front of you to attack with a combo block. What are the key blocks in that scenario? Well, it does kind of depend on the front and how the interior defensive linemen are lined up, but in a situation like this one against Baltimore, also in that 2019 season, this is an alignment where the center matters more than anybody else. The playside guard, tackle, and tight end all have a huge disadvantage to the front side, and it's going to be nearly impossible for them to get an edge here against 3 Ravens defenders that all have outside leverage on them. Against this type of alignment, outside zone really just becomes about turning that leverage into a weapon and widening those defenders out even more while relying on the center to execute a reach block on the head-up zero technique so that they can basically cut the defense in half and create a cutback lane. Going back to the beginning of the episode, if we're reading this run gap to gap from the outside in as a running back, that center, Weston Richburg, is the first lineman whose gap is not at a leverage disadvantage pre-snap. And Raheem Mostert knows that. He expects this run to cut back because it's very unrealistic to think that he's going to get to the edge, but he's still going to press it outside as much as he can anyway and read it out so that he can wait for his chance to cut back. Once Mostert went through that read to the front side, he took a little hop just to check where Richburg was on the reach block and to see if he needed to really cut back even more. But to his surprise, there was an even bigger canyon there than he thought there would be because that reach block was just so effective by Richburg. So Mostert took off untouched and he got up to the second and then the third level and got a huge gain out of it. I've said it before and I'm going to say it again. When this concept is really working and everyone's doing their job and it's the fourth quarter and you're ripping off 8, 9, 15-yard gains over and over and over again and there's nothing the defense can do about it, it's the closest thing this game has to art. All of these plays that you just saw today are only scratching the surface on what outside zone can actually be, and I'm pretty sure you picked up on that as we were talking about it. Like I said, there's like an infinite amount of ways you can run this just based on personnel and formations and motions, and even the defensive front, obviously that dictates a lot of different adjustments as well. And we only talked about outside zone to the strong side today, by the way. We didn't even touch outside zone to the weak side, which is an entirely different thing that's run a whole different way. We also didn't talk about inside zone. We didn't talk about mid zone. We didn't talk about split zone. There's a lot there, and we could talk about it probably forever because all of these different runs kind of complement each other. So if you want extra videos just about those individual concepts, let me know in the comments, because I know that some people like super nerdy content like this and some people don't. So just let me know. Also, by the way, EJ is coming down in a few days. We're going to be sitting right in that corner over there, banging out, I'm not even kidding, 40 podcast episodes. He's going to be here for like a week. Well, he might actually have to come down multiple times, but we're going to be doing 40 podcast episodes from that corner, spending an hour plus breaking down every single team, schematic adjustments they've made based on coaching changes, personnel changes, going over pretty much everything that you need to know about every individual team for an hour plus. And that's all going to be shot right there. And that's going to be starting to go live over on the Bootleg Football Podcast channel later this month. And I think we're doing 8 straight weeks of 5 episodes a week. It's a humongous undertaking. And I thank our editors in advance for helping us with that, because it's insane. And we hope you guys enjoy that content as much as we enjoy making it. It's probably the craziest series we do all year. So again, Bootleg Football Podcast channel if you're interested in deep dives into every single team. And with that, I'm going to get out of here and start working on all the other shit I got to make. Later.